My first salary was £15 a week. People now have enough knowledge and information to ask some of the right questions. If it's always on a card and they don't ever see it, it's very difficult to get a sense of value, isn't it? Can't change the past, can you? But you can change the future. You can change the future by knowing how to invest your money and make it work for you.
You're listening to Better Financial Futures. I'm your host, John Boatman. After 3 decades in financial advice, I've seen how small, informed decisions can transform someone's life. This podcast is my way of sharing this experience so that even one listener can take a step towards a stronger, better financial future. Now, today I have a great guest for you all, a gentleman that I've met through business networking and a former financial advisor, Robert Harris. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, John.
Can I ask you a little bit about your personal and professional background and your relationship with money?
You certainly can, yes. Well, John, I was 22 years of age when I sold my first investment plan. And now I'm 82 years of age. So you might see that I'm outdoing you, my lovely friend. You know, I've got 60 years of experience of what happens with people, their money, and just life in general. Yeah. And I think you'll agree with me, John, that when, like yourself, you've been in an industry for a good long period of time, you pick up knowledge and intuition and awareness that you don't get until you've been in that business for a long time. So that's some of the value that I'd like to bring into this little conversation with you, and of course in my life. I'm actually working, John, because I refuse to walk away with all my knowledge and just dump it. I think it's of value to people. So that's what I'm doing here as well with you, John. Basically, yeah.
Fantastic. So you may be the eldest statesman I've had on this podcast so far, and maybe for the whole of the time we have a podcast, right? But just going back, because you've obviously been in the industry a long time. I know you're no longer a regulated financial advisor; you're retired, but you're giving your knowledge back. So just before I go into what you do now, obviously over your lifetime, money has changed a lot. So I mean, just talk us through how you learn about money when you were a child.
Okay, yeah, sure. Quite interestingly, whenever I use any coins nowadays, I don't know what I'm doing. It's a real muddle to me now. It's always card, isn't it? You know, and I go down to my local co-op, and I live in the village green and the little co-op shop and whatnot, you know. And if I have got any money, I don't try and count it out. I just bang it on the counter and let them do it. It's just funny stuff these days, isn't it? You know? Yeah. But I think how did I learn about money? Well, my dear wise mother helped me along that way, I think, a little bit. I remember as a very little boy, really, I got some pocket money, and I've heard stories about some very poor children and poor people, you know? And I decided I want to give all my pocket money to these poor children. And my mother stepped in with a lot of wisdom. No, you have to think about this. Yeah, have to give a proportion to people who are struggling. And that sort of thing, you know? And I suppose, thinking of my mother's wisdom again, when I reached, you know what, John? We used to queue up to get our salary every week, and it was cash in an envelope. Can you believe that? Yeah, sure you can. You know. So I remember walking through the kitchen door one day, and my mother was there cooking the meal, and I walked in with my first week's salary, as it were. You know. She said, "Now let's see what you got," she said. "Now there's this amount here. I can take that for your upkeep, or you can save it in the building society. Which do you want to do?" And I said, "In the building society, mum." Even then, I wasn't that stupid, you know. So, of course, the fact that began to happen meant that when I was old and I met the girl I wanted to marry, we had a deposit for a house. Good old mum, eh? What do you think?
It's amazing how uh, others actually have such an influence. I think one of our last guests mentioned his mother and envelopes of money, actually. Um, so yeah, it's a good influence, and obviously you've seen money change, as I said, in regard to things like the decimalization of money, and you would have remembered shillings, and you would have
Oh,
remember.
yeah.
Can you explain that to people? What that?
A
Just
shilling.
remind us about what that was, just for someone who doesn't know.
I think what I can describe to you, John, is a florin. Um, that was a 2 shilling piece, a lovely little round shiny thing. And I used to save up like mad when I was a kid. You know, 'cause we lived opposite the park gates in Harrow actually, um, and there was one of those little cabin places down in the park, and it sold. I think it was Fry's chocolate creams, you know, and they cost a florin, 2 shillings. So I would save up until I could have a floor and go run down there and get those chocolates were gone within about 10 minutes, you know, but it'd take quite a long time to build up 2 shillings. You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, my first salary was, £15 a week. 7 and eventually, when that eventually grew and I got to £20 a week, that was £1,000 a year. Well, I had made it. That was mega stars, that was.
So a salary of £1,000 a year. What do you think that would be now then? Would you
Oh, go well, I mean, £1,000 a year was a little bit above average wage. Today, average wage is £38,000, isn't it? I believe that's right, roughly. Okay. So, I suppose that will be about £40,000 a year today, I think.
so I know that you came into financial services many, many years ago. I think it was in the year that I was born, actually.
There was no regulation that I knew anything about at that time anyway. One way or the other, you know. Yeah. I remember, Standard Life helped me out. They gave me a loan to support the startup of my actual business, you see. And I was too naive then to realize that they did that, not out of the kindness of their heart too much, but they thought they would probably attract somebody, which they did, of course. And in fact, my very first, policy or endowment policy I took out was with Standard Life, actually. Yeah. So it must have worked, mustn't it? Yeah, must have worked.
Absolutely, yeah. So you saw in your career as a financial advisor, you obviously saw kind of the changes of, I suppose, the client expectations, the regulation, the professionalism of the industry. You must have seen a lot of changes out. How did that, how did your life as a financial advisor evolve?
Okay. Well, I think, when I was in my 20s and so on, um, people people really did buy from people, um, because the amount of knowledge about money or investment or whatever was just about nil, frankly. You know, it was complete mystery to people, to be honest. People knew that they ought to save money, so when I spoke to them, they would agree to save money and invest money, normally in the old-fashioned endowment kind of policy. And I remember, one of the, contracts, actually, at the end of a 10-year period, it paid you an income for 10 years, you know? And people quite like that, the idea of having some guaranteed income coming in for now. It's quite a good idea really, isn't it? Yeah. Mm, it's quite interesting. I remember, John, can I tell you, I mean, I went cold calling to get business, and I was going up a back street and through an alleyway, and it was, small garages and things, and as I walking along, there was a car poking out of a garage, and, there was somebody's feet that they almost stumbled over. So I stopped. I said, "Hello there." And this body wriggled out, and there was a guy under the car. I said, "Do you like being under there?" And he said, "Not especially." I said, "What do you like doing?" "Playing golf." I said, "Well, in 10 years' time, how about you having enough money to be able to take a day off every week and go and play?" He said, "Yeah, I'll buy into that." And he did. Whether he ended up playing golf, I don't know. But, these things happen. Amazing.
That's a kind of real impact on just starting a relationship, starting a discussion. And I think now the world's a lot different and there's a lot of noise, isn't there? And lots of information. How do you feel that the industry's changed since you've left it from what you know, since you've left the industry?
People now have enough knowledge and information to ask some of the right questions. I think I suppose, kind of dangerous for somebody just to hear an advisor in today's world telling them what to do without really understanding why and without being able to have some kind of discussion about what's really happening with my money, etc., etc. I mean, when I kicked off, none of those discussions really happened at all. It was all about put £20. Well, not £20 was too much money then, probably, but put £20 in and you'll get £5,000 back in 10 years' time, sort of thing. I remember I used to put a structure together where people would have money coming in every 5 years. So after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years. I remember one guy, there was a young chap in a petrol station, and quite close to him was a red sports car. And it was quite obvious that that was his car. So I kept talking. I was saying, "What are you doing about saving? You got the sports car." Yeah, well, I can pick up some of the young ladies in the sports car because they like it. You see. And I said, "Yeah, but when you get older and you want to do something like getting married, you won't have any money, will you?" And eventually, we set up this 5-year program with him. You see. And blowing me down. It's some long time. He rang me. He said, "Would you come and sit down with me and my girlfriend, please?" And I unravelled to the girlfriend this financial plan he got. I think she dumped him actually, but I'm not sure. There we go. Yeah.
I'm just intrigued to know if you got the red sports car.
No, I didn't get it. No, he actually dumped that in the end. He dumped it. Yeah, he did.
So clearly you're very passionate about people getting financial education,
Yeah, the
guidance.
education particularly, and then to work with financial advisors with that education. Yes.
But are you surprised that we don't teach financial education in school and financial literacy?
Well, lots of adults say to me, "Rob, you should teach what you teach in schools." Um, to which my first question is, "That's a lovely idea, and you're absolutely right, but where and when did you learn?" And then there's normally a stunned silence because they haven't learnt it. I'm sure you've done that as well, John. You know, um, but I think, you see, when you think about teaching children in school, that would be about basics like budgeting, I think. I very much doubt whether children at school, if it's quite interesting, because I do a family money awareness course. Um, and that's a situation um, where y- young people come on the course and then they want to do their own thing. Nothing to do with what their parents have suggested that they do. And that's all very normal, isn't it? I can see you nodding, John. Yeah. It's all very normal. Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, I mean, children should be taught. I remember, you're making me trigger all kinds of stories, John, from my memory here. You're a good man. I remember I was teaching a Sunday school class once, all right? And long time ago, and there were about, I don't know, 15 kids and everything. And I took with me 15 separate pound coins. And we talked about giving and being generous and how money grows and whatnot. And I gave them each a pound to take away so that in a month's time I could go back to find out what they'd done with it. Now, don't ask, I can't remember what they'd done, but I can't remember the story. But that was quite interesting. Um, I think their
Yeah,
parents
you
were quite
think
amazed. They went home with a pound coin. Yeah.
so I think a lot of younger people now don't actually see money, physically see the money.
No, no, I'm sure you're right, actually. I'm sure you're right, yes. If it's always on a card and they don't ever see it, It's very difficult to get a sense of value, isn't it?
So now you're out of the industry.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what you do now. I know you've not walked away completely from financial literacy and education.
I got to a point where I was happy to retire, basically, and I sold the business for a nice big pile of money, and away I would go, not the Bahamas probably, but something like that. But I had some of my older, longer clients who wouldn't let me go. They banging on my door, "Rob, Rob," sort of thing. And I think I may have mentioned to you, John, one of my many weaknesses, I'm sure, is in my DNA. I'm just a rescuer, actually. Um, so I'm not a drunkard or a drug addict, but I'm a rescuer addict, if you know what I mean. And so, God help me, I couldn't help but go back to them. And I also was thinking to myself, if I lose all my knowledge, if I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. And that was a trigger that also said, that's wrong to do that. I need to come back and use it. So I went back to them and said, look, this is how it's going to work. You know, I'll set up a course so you can come and learn the basics of money and you'll learn about the economic background, the political background, and also behavioral science, which is what people will do with their money. And then you begin to look at money differently once you look at it from through that kind of lens, you see. All right. And at the end of the course, you'll begin to decide what you want to do with your money. And before you do it, you can come back to me. Say, Rob, I'm thinking of investing in gold. And my question will be, well, okay, tell me what research you've done behind that desire that you've got. And then I'll probe and I'll listen. And if there's a lack of understanding, I'll re-educate them, you see. Then they might change their mind, they might go and do it, that's absolutely fine, you see. I'll also say to you, why do you want to invest in gold? You know? And listen to the reasons why as well. That's the broad spectrum. So I never give advice, I never tell people what to do. I don't want to. I want them to learn what to do. Um, and I want them to, if they want to invest just in their own name, that's fine. But many people do need and should have advice as well. And I'm very strong on saying to people, learn the questions that you need to ask your advisor and learn to understand what he says back to you. Because unlike yourself, I think, John, some advisors will talk in something kind of financial speak. And when I was an advisor, I had a young couple came to me, never had any money before in their life. They'd inherited a lot of money. And they came and saw me twice. And I sat in my throne like a god, more or less, in those days, telling them what they should do. And they kept on, yes, Rob, of course, Rob, yes, Rob, of course, Rob. On the second occasion they met me, they wrote out a something great big check for the investment to the investment companies that we'll be using. That's wrong. But back in those days, we didn't understand that was wrong. We were there to tell people what to do. Now we're there with our knowledge and experience to help people understand what is the best thing for and for them to act that out with you, you see. I think is that a fair way of putting it, maybe?
I think what I pick up from you always is that you were unable to let go of the knowledge you had, and you wanted to share that with others and actually help others. And we've talked before on this podcast about the importance of budgeting, the importance of understanding money. And I think there is an element of taboo in the UK, and I think also we've touched on the fact that financial advice is not just for people who have money. It's to understand what you can do with money. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would indeed, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I come across there's so many people with a little bit of money or a small amount in pensions, isn't there, that kind of thing, and they fall into what the industry calls the advice gap. um, because the perception is that they've got to have £200,000 on before anybody will look at them from an advisory point of view. Um, but there are people like yourself, John. I know that's true. You'll offer a helping hand, won't you? And helping people to understand. It may not even be that you act on their behalf, even possibly. It may be just you share the knowledge and understanding and support them while they go and do the right thing, as it were. Is that in line with your thinking, really?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, we sometimes you can just learn from certain decisions you've made in your own life as well as advice you've given. Um,
Yes.
and I just think for me, there's no harm in actually directing people in the right place. Is there a particular resource that you go to, or any particular books that you really would recommend or you love?
One thing about me is that I always have to dig underneath the surface for everything. So I can read a paragraph in a book and it will take me a long time because I can say, what does that really mean? I go delving underneath. So it takes me a long time to read the books. I'm not very good at reading books, um, but I listen to financial news, of course. Um, there's a lot of information around at the moment on actual internet. And sometimes I hear that, then I challenge it sometimes as well. Um, ChatGPT, God, there's a lot of information on there as well. And again, I've learnt to challenge it. But then, of course, I have the advantage of being in the business for so long that I know the questions to ask it. And that again comes to back to the question of when you're working with someone like yourself, John, um, need to know the right kind of questions to ask and so on. Even something like Sky News is on the background. Sometimes they throw up charts of how the oil price has risen to $125 dollars per barrel today, and how if in fact it goes to 130 barrels, we might see inflation rising to 6%. That was today's commentary. Wow. Mind you, there is a much better viewpoint than that as well. So don't tremble. It's quite possible it won't be anywhere near as bad as that. But there we are. We need to be prepared, don't we?
One of my closing questions, Rob, as we come to an end here,
Sure.
is to ask you, what's your biggest financial mistake of your life?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's the biggest, but I think I do wonder back to it. I said I'd taken an endowment savings policy out with Standard Life, didn't I? And it's very simple. The answer's very simple. When I think back, I regret very much that I didn't put in double the amount. And that's a message in itself, isn't it, really? I mean, the results came through in 10 years' time, whatever it was, and that was nice. But goodness me, the return on it was really very good. But if it had been double the amount, it would have made a meaningful difference to my life. But because I was too cautious, I probably wanted to spend my money on jam donuts or maybe fry chocolate creams in the park, rather than invest it, which was a shame, really. So that's one of the mistakes I think I've made. I don't I don't like to think back about mistakes too much. I always tend to look forward, not backwards, if I'm honest. Can't change the past, can you? But you can change the future. You can, and you can change the future by knowing how to invest your money and make it work for you.
Absolutely, and then we'll put in the show notes the actual details of your courses and how people can get hold of you, because I think it's what you do is so valuable, and I'm kind of in admiration of what you're doing, because you're actually still giving back after all these years in financial services. So thank you, Rob, for coming on to the podcast, and really appreciate what you're doing, and keep doing all that great work for the people you help. And it's a pleasure to have you in our life,
John, can
and
I
also
also
in
say
on the
for you as
podcast.
well, I'm grateful that you're doing what you're doing. We both have the same heart, don't we? That we just want to lift people up and help them. And I know your heart's there as well. So thank you for you as well, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We'll catch up. We'll catch up again soon, all
And
right?
that would be nice. That would be good. Let's do that. Yes, amen.
My top tip is, do you think you could save more than you actually think you could afford? Just stretch yourself a little bit. Just save a little bit more. It might be amazing what happens to that money compounded into the future.